In the heart of a region torn apart by endless conflict, supplies of food and medicine, enough to sustain life for months, lie trapped, unable to reach those who need them most. Warehouses brim with aid, yet borders remain sealed. The people of Gaza continue to wait, day after day, as the silence of blocked roads grows heavier than the sound of bombs. In January 2025, a new law in Israel changed everything. The activities of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, were officially banned. International staff, including dedicated humanitarian workers like Mr. Kyoto, could no longer enter Gaza. The world watched as the gates to aid and compassion were locked tighter than ever. For decades, UNRWA had been a lifeline for millions, a fragile bridge between survival and despair. But that bridge was suddenly torn apart, leaving countless families stranded in uncertainty. In October, the International Court of Justice delivered an advisory opinion that echoed across the world. It urged Israel to fulfill its obligations under international humanitarian law. It called for the free passage of food, medicine, and essential aid. It pleaded that the hands trying to heal should not be tied by politics. Yet even after the ruling, the suffering continued. Trucks loaded with hope stood still, engines cold. The checkpoints, meant to ensure security, became barriers against survival. In the ruins of Gaza, the cries of children blend with the sound of drones. Teachers, once the pillars of their communities, now struggle to find classrooms that no longer exist. Schools have become shelters, and shelters have become graves. Communication remains fragile. Kyoto and his fellow international staff try to keep in touch with their colleagues through unstable internet connections. Messages cross borders filled with fear, love, and exhaustion. After the ceasefire, there was joy, Kyoto recalls. But then the bombs returned. And with them, despair. Voices from Gaza whisper through the static. We can only pray now, they say. When will the world see us as human? Each message carries the same question, not of politics or strategy, but of humanity. Every child who loses their school loses a piece of their future. Every parent who buries their child loses their will to dream. Some local staff confess they can no longer endure it. We can't stay here any longer, they say, their voices trembling with fatigue. The war has already taken 380 UNRWA staff members in Gaza. They were not soldiers. They were teachers, doctors, and aid workers, people who believed in peace more than power. Japanese staff, 14 in total, now continue their mission from neighboring Jordan and Lebanon. They work tirelessly, coordinating aid, rebuilding trust, keeping hope alive across borders. Their work is respected deeply in the Middle East. Japan's humanitarian presence has become a symbol of quiet reliability, a promise that compassion can exist even when politics fail. The people know their faces. They remember the kindness, the patience, and the humility that Japan's workers bring. They call them the builders of hope. Yet even hope has its limits when war returns. Kyoto's greatest fear now is that the fragile peace may collapse again. He has seen it happen before, the moment calm turns into chaos. He continues to appeal to the Japanese government for ongoing support, not just in funds, but in voice and solidarity. But more than that, he appeals to the people of Japan. Please, he says, raise your voices. Don't look away. He asks not for sympathy, but for awareness, for people to speak, to share, to remember that every statistic is a soul. In the comfort of peaceful nations, it's easy to scroll past headlines, to forget that every bomb dropped on Gaza echoes in the hearts of those who have seen too many wars. The aid workers who remain speak of exhaustion but not surrender. They say their mission is not political, it is human. They remind us that neutrality is not indifference, it is courage in the face of chaos. Inside Gaza, families huddle together, still believing that one day, the world will remember them not as victims, but as survivors. Children draw pictures of homes they no longer have. They use the colors of dust and smoke, yet somehow still paint the sun. Teachers without classrooms gather children under broken roofs, reciting lessons of peace while the skies roar above them. Mothers hold their babies close, whispering prayers over the sound of distant explosions. The war has taught them patience beyond words. But patience cannot fill empty stomachs. Medicine runs out, water runs dry, and yet the human spirit endures. In refugee camps, songs of sorrow mix with songs of faith. People cling to life as an act of defiance. Kyoto listens to these voices every day. Through static-filled calls, he hears laughter mixed with tears. He knows that his colleagues in Gaza continue to work, even when there is no electricity, even when the danger is constant. He calls them heroes, though they never call themselves that. They simply say, "We are doing what we must." In Amman and Beirut, Japanese teams gather at dawn, discussing logistics, rerouting aid, praying for safe passage. Every box of medicine packed carries a silent message: "You are not forgotten." Every meal distributed whispers, "We still care." Humanitarian work, they say, is not about winning. It's about surviving long enough to believe in peace again. Kyoto has seen both tragedy and courage. He knows that compassion is the only currency that never loses value. He carries the memory of fallen colleagues as a burden and as a promise. The mission continues, not because it is easy, but because it is necessary. And in his quiet appeal to Japan, he reminds the world of a truth too often forgotten: that the measure of a nation is not in its wealth or its weapons, but in its willingness to stand up for those who cannot. Let your voices be heard, he says softly. Because silence helps no one. The people of Gaza wait, still believing that somewhere, beyond the walls and borders, humanity will answer. And until that day comes, the world must keep listening.